So it's been about 4 years since I've consistently written horoscopes, and I wanted to make this video because I wanted to see if I could try to articulate why, for the main reason that I don't even really know why. And so usually I can be an oral processor, so maybe saying all of this will make it clear to me what I've been working through for these 4 years. Um, but so in 2020, I think it was like summertime, I was a full-time astrologer, and it was like the coolest thing I've ever done. And my clients, I was working with brands, I was, making a lot of Instagram content. I used to be a graphic designer, so I had such a ball, like making things beautiful and, designing. It was sort of the era of Instagram at that time was a lot of like more static content, and now it's obviously transformed into more video. And it was just at that time kind of a blast. It was just, I couldn't believe it was my job. I couldn't believe that people were resonating with the content. Like, I couldn't believe I had clients, it was just the coolest thing. I had just done a piece with Good Morning America. It felt in many ways like I was like at the height of something. And I was going through a lot of stuff behind the scenes, like predominantly recovering from a decade-long eating disorder, and it was also a global pandemic. And I was healing from some family stuff, and we had moved to Maine out of New York City, and like it was just like a cacophony of different factors, which makes it really hard at this point in my life to parse out what caused what. But I basically woke up one day in, I think it was like July, maybe August of 2020. And I sat down at my computer to write that month's horoscope, and like nothing came out. It was the weirdest thing. It was as if my fingers weren't working, my brain wasn't working. And it was like, I could get words on a page, but the words either made no sense, or they were just a crock of shit, or they were, a bunch of words strung together, but without any real meaning. And what I didn't understand at the time is it was the beginning of a very long journey of what maybe you could call burnout, or a psychological break, or a spiritual awakening. Like, who knows the difference sometimes. And yeah, it was terrifying. So like at the time I didn't have any understanding as to like why this could be happening. So I tried, I worked. I also was actually in the midst of getting and signing for a book deal. And so it could not have been worse timing to lose my pen, because I was about to sign on to a really large endeavor of professional writing. And I just kind of kept thinking that one day it would change and one day it would go back to normal. So I think like I just took a pause from horoscopes that month, and the next month I would kind of wait at the keyboard to see if something would happen. And I just have no other way to articulate it except that I could not bring myself to do the very thing that I really wanted to do. And it was a level of powerlessness of which I've never experienced in my life. It was an out-of-body experience. And it's easy when like you break a leg or you go through some like physical injury where people are like, okay, like I get why you're not doing your job. It was so hard to explain, not just other people, but like just to explain to myself why I couldn't do what I was typically doing. And it even got to the point where I had to stop doing readings because the readings felt so misaligned. I didn't feel like I was showing up for people in the way that I wanted to be. I didn't feel like I was a clear space holder for that anymore. And I just kind of went into the bunker of my psyche. And it's hard because it's been so many years. It's hard to tell like what happened where, but it was around that time that I began to, so I was in the process of eating disorder recovery. I'd always, found a myriad of ways to restrict my weight since I was very young. So, definitely bulimic periods, I didn't have words for it at the time, but definitely anorexic periods, but I would have just called it a diet. But it was, you know, eating a massive, massive calorie deficit. And around that time, around that summer, I was really in the swing of kind of re-nourishing my body. Like I remember me and my husband, well, he's my boyfriend at the time, we just ate a lot of kielbasa and potatoes and butter. And it was just this epic season of my life of letting go of restriction and letting go of all of these things that took up so much mental energy for me, of how do you look and how are other people going to perceive and receive you. And I really felt in some ways like I went through like a second puberty or something, where I began to like feel feelings I hadn't felt before, experience sides of myself that I hadn't ever experienced before, or at least not for a very long time. My hunger returned, my appetite returned, my, you know, energy returned. It's amazing what feeding your body can do for you psychologically as well as like physically. And I was also having like a spiritual awakening. It was beautiful to like look the world in the eye and just sort of be who I was, and, you know, not try to contort myself into like such a small body, and like to just sort of be the size that I think the universe always intended me to be. And for some reason that felt very correlated with what was going on with my inability to write. Because to flash back in time, probably not going to speak in like a perfect linear manner, but I had always wanted to be successful, in addition to always wanting to be skinny. And I, you know, moved away. So I went to college in like Central California. I moved to New York, I think the day after I graduated, literally booked a flight, got some help from my parents to get there, and just sort of was like, all right, on to creating this thing. And for me at the time, it was a graphic designer. I really wanted to work in fashion and beauty, and I kind of, you know, pounded the pavement and, you know, started as a beer girl at the beer garden at the Standard Hotel. And I would carry my laptop from my internship to that beer job. It was so heavy. It was so hot in New York that summer. And I just wanted to like make a name for myself. I wanted to be someone worth knowing. I wanted to be someone who would be remembered. I remember really admiring Grace Coddington at the time. Like I wanted to be an art director. I wanted to be a creative director. I wanted to work in those spaces. I thought that would be the answer to all of my problems. Like if I could just be known as this like very chic, very, you know, whatever ingenue, then all of my insecurities would like fall to the wayside. Everyone would fall in love with me. I'd have tons of friends, and like all of my, it would be the solution to all my problems. And that underlying belief system like really charged me forward around workaholism. Like I went through cycles of working 60 to 80-hour weeks. Granted, I was quite young, so like the body can tolerate it to some extent. And, you know, I just sort of did what I needed to do. I ended up getting some really cool opportunities. I worked at one of my favorite places. I worked at Glossier for a long time, and that was just like a total dream come true. And it felt like I was really building towards this thing, you know, whatever that thing was, recognition or like acceptance or, you know, some type of external validation. And that was really tied into my weight. It was like, you know, you can't just be successful, you have to be skinny and successful. Like those are the two barometers of what it means to be like a successful woman in this world. And, you know, when I began to recover, when the astrology career began, it came out of like a really bad dip in my mental health. I was 23 and I just sort of had what I would now call, but I didn't call at the time, sort of like a psychotic break. And, but again, on a spectrum, you know, wasn't the most severe thing in the world, but it was alcohol induced, which is why I didn't take it very seriously at the time. But I spiraled into like a major mental health depression. I had gone from this like very ambitious sort of like, you know, go-getter to having almost like a dual life where I would go home and cry for hours. And you know, I did a bunch of therapeutic work, and, you know, to that younger version of myself's credit, like I sought out a lot of help. Also credit to privilege of like having access to those resources. And I just began to like open up new sides of myself in therapy. And, you know, I began to really nerd out about astrology, something that I was always into anyways, started doing readings for friends, started kind of making that a huge part of my identity. I think I discovered a birth chart when I was 21, and it was just game on ever since then. And I went through, you know, so like I healed a lot of things in that period. You know, I healed from a lot of, you know, childhood stuff. I healed from some old belief systems, but the thing that never changed was this idea that like success would heal everything. And that sort of fire kept burning no matter what. And what I never connected the dots about at the time is like every ambition I had was associated with something that I really loved to do. So I was always like an artistic kid growing up. I turned that into a graphic design career, and little by slow and slowly but surely, I turned my love of astrology into a career. So I created an Instagram account and did it so in a beautifully designed way that was able to grab the attention of a few cool friends of mine, and they were able to share that. And then I was able to kind of grow organically from there. And it just continued to fuel this idea of like, okay, cool. So I'm no longer going to be Grace Coddington, but I can be this like really well-known graphic designer, and I can create cool things, and like people will seek out my expertise, and like that's how I will fill this like huge hole that lives inside of me. And despite all of those like years of therapy, I still never addressed my eating disorder, and never addressed that kind of like huge insatiable desire to be externally validated. And so to come back to 2020, I think there was something about letting go of the thinness that also unintentionally, consequentially forced me to let go of the addiction or the idea of success. And it was like the second that that was taken away by some power far larger than myself, or maybe from my own physiology of like recovering from an eating disorder, I just couldn't care anymore about creating things for external validation anymore. Because look, the astrology career was divine. It was channeled. It was truly something that I am so proud of. But there was this huge, enormous pressure to continue to build what I was building, you know? If you get to 100K followers, then you better get to 200K followers, and you better get to 300, you know, you guys, you know the deal. We live in the internet age of like, you can metrically see how much people like you. And so once this insatiable need to be thin and successful was taken from me, or I surrendered, I'm not sure which came first, one of the two. Once this like invisible cord was cut, all of like, I think the years of stress caught up to me. And I had this huge feeling of like, I don't want to have to do this anymore. And that was terrifying because financially I had to do it to some extent. I think in the year of 2021, I lived off of $20,000, which meant I had to take out a loan for the equivalent amount. And it was like the roughest financial year of my life. And, but I just couldn't work. Granted, I wrote a book during that cycle. I don't know how. It's amazing that that was able to be something that was produced out of that cycle. But yeah, it was just all I wanted to do was walk my dog. All I wanted to do, I made like tons of loaves of bread. Got really good at sourdough baking. All I wanted to do was like relax. All I wanted to do was just exist. And I felt really guilty about it the whole time. Like, I can't lie and say that this was like a overnight spiritual awakening where I was happy about it all. I felt like my entire identity had been ripped apart of like, you know, when you live off of external success and validation and thinness and skinniness and your appearance for so long, it's so hard to be like, and I love myself completely and totally no matter what happens there. And I cried most days, but not in the way that I did when I was 23. It wasn't these tears of reliving trauma and reliving the past. It was tears of like grief and acceptance around, I'm not going to be the same person that I thought that I was going to be. You know, like the death of an idea of yourself that I was experiencing was something more painful than I can probably ever articulate to people. I thought that I had this idea of who I would grow up to be, and to, in 1 year, have it turn around in such a substantial way was so disorienting. And I couldn't dress for the same body anymore. So even in addition to like not having a career, God, I should put that in air quotes, not having a career, I also didn't have this like vehicle anymore that I could dress up and make look a certain way. And I ended up cutting all my hair off. It was really, really, and I wish I know it's not that big of a deal, but for me it was. It was just this total reorientation towards my own identity. And what was so weird about that period of time is I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy, truly. It was a really, really weird period of time. At the same time, though, there were some deeper moments of peace and acceptance I'd ever experienced prior to that. And so I knew I was on to something. I just had no idea where I was going. I still don't know where I'm going. I didn't know what would end result, because I had questions of like, will I ever be an astrologer again? And can you be an astrologer if you don't have an internet presence? And can you be successful if you're not posting consistently for the algorithm online? And what if people forget about me? And what if I can't return to this by the time I'm ready to return to this? And like, what if, you know, not only will I not be who I thought I was going to be, but I'm literally going to be someone without a job and someone without a career. And, you know, it got down to brass taxes of like, will I ever make money again? And will I ever be able to be someone who contributes something? Like the barometer of what success looked like got low, the bar got lower and lower and lower. And I was still having those questions of like, what if I don't even get that? And what happened over the years is I would try to write again. And I had some moments of success with it, you know, like a sporadic thought that I wanted to share here and a sporadic thought there. And I was really proud of the horoscopes that I wrote at the end of 2023. I actually did like audio recordings of it. And I think what I always thought would change, which at least thus far has not, is I cannot seem to tap into that same level of ambition that I used to. I am no longer fearful that I will never. I've accepted that I might never. And I'm at this point so baffled at what has happened that I'm just curious at this point. Like, what am I put on earth to do? And like, what am I here to say? And like, am I here to do or say anything, you know, or should I just go get, you know, another graphic design job and like, you know, all these things. And in that process, readings with clients have become more fruitful than ever because there is no ambition or career attached to them any longer. You know, I see individual human beings and I get to have an hour and 15 lifelong connection with them. And if I'm doing my job well, we can reach a place of resonance with each other. And that is what I expect from my days these days. I no longer hunger or thirst for the external validation that I think I once lived off of and subsisted off of. With that being said, though, it has opened up new creative pathways inside of myself that I couldn't have anticipated. I have wrestled with what needs to be shared and what doesn't need to be shared around those creative endeavors, because, to revisit something I mentioned before, everything that I used to love turned into a job for me. So art turned into graphic design, astrology turned into becoming an astrologer. There's this amazing, I think it's an Olivia Rodrigo lyric where she said, like, watch me go ruin another thing I love. I'm sure I butchered that, but you get the gist of it. And it's been really humbling to work on creative things without thinking about how to market them and without thinking about how to sell, like, you know, package them in this way that is going to be consumable by other human beings. Like, even making this video is so weird to me because I am so used to pre-planning and writing my stuff almost anonymously. And the idea of just speaking off the cuff is like, you might say something stupid, or you might just say stuff that doesn't resonate with people. When I feel like I can write it, package it, design it, sell it in a way, it's like people will listen. But just being a human being to a human being is so much more vulnerable than the way that I used to be able to share my thoughts. And so where I'm at now is that I'm working on stuff, mostly working on being a human being in the world, working with clients, working on a creative project that I'm really excited about, and working on trying to be more transparent with people and with you, and working on not having to package my body nor packaging myself and my work and my thoughts in a way that needs to be consumable, but seeing if I could just do more things organically and have the willingness to, like, put them out there without the expectation of growth over growth over growth, you know, of that sort of capitalistic mentality of, like, if you begin, you have to continue. And if you start on something and it's working, keep doing the same thing. Because, as I'm sure many of you could understand, like, as when it comes to things that we love and things that are creative and things that are authentic, it's ever evolving, it's organic. It can't be, like, you know, executed in this, like, sort of linear, like it's like on a factory line or something, the way that I used to feel like content needed to be made. And I think what I am realizing and saying all this out loud is I don't think it had anything to do with not wanting to, like, talk or write about astrology any longer, or to do with, like, not, you know, wanting to be in this career. I think it had to do with, like, not wanting to have to perform in a way that was pleasing to everyone except myself any longer. You know, like, I love my old Instagram page, is gorgeous, but I also see someone who felt like what she had to say wasn't enough, and she had to present it in a way that would allow people to take it seriously. And I think that, of course, when it's organic and natural, that it's wonderful to package yourself in a way that's authentic. The beautiful RuPaul quote of, like, everyone's in drag. Like, there is something about showing who you are in a visual manner. That's beautiful. But I think for me, it began to become almost a hole or a trap, or like a feeling of, like, it needs to be this way in order for people to have any interest in me, or even just to not hate me, just to talk about the inner self-hatred that I have. And what I want to work on is the messiness. I want to work on the imperfections. I want and by the way, sorry, when I say work on, I want to work on revealing the imperfections and the messiness and the uncertainty and the lack of clarity, because I was never and am still not someone who has all the answers packaged in a beautiful JPEG. Like, that was never the case, and it's still not the case. And I want, one of my favorite quotes ever is like, beauty is a blur of motion. Like, I just want to be more authentic in whatever audience I have left, or, you know, could have left, or whatever audience doesn't even resonate, whatever human beings may or may not connect with what I'm vibrating with at the time. Because if I've learned anything from chart readings and astrology, it's like everyone has their audience, and like, to really vibrate at the frequency of which you were naturally born will resonate with someone else's frequency. It just might not resonate with 1 billion people, and that's okay. And so yeah, I want to show you guys what I've been working on, and it's music, and it's imperfect, and I'm not good at it, and it might be terrible, but I want to show it to you anyway and see where it goes. And I want to talk more about astrology. I want to talk to you guys about my thoughts and my musings, because what my husband knows better than anyone is I'm thinking about it all the time. I'm just usually too afraid to say what I'm thinking, or, you know, I feel like it needs to be done perfectly or something, but maybe just whipping out a camera and having like a word vomit session might actually maybe be interesting to someone, even just one person. So that's all for now.
Don't know how to do this old trick anymore. This magic wand won't cast a spell. See, I'd hoped it could heal our shared despair, but these years of tears left me fogged, damn blind as hell. A fogged up mirror with no stories and no hope left to sell. There is no hope. So I be no longer your favorite work of art, a gift in disguise as you tore my whole world apart. You cut the cord that I could not free if I surrendered not to have the sweetest relief. The fall was slow, but I crashed suddenly, wholly all at once. Cried out for you all the way down, but you were nowhere to be found. So our dreams died in one great big thud. I be no longer your favorite work of art, a gift in disguise as you tore my whole world apart. You cut the cord that I could not free if I surrendered not to have the sweetest relief. But you see that I'm happier than I've ever been. So I have no regrets since you left. The stale sadness can breeze through me like the wind in my hair. I be no longer your favorite work of art, a gift in disguise as you tore my whole world apart. You cut the cord that I could not free if I surrendered not to have the sweetest relief. So thank you for these memories I won't forget, with no regrets, and no regrets. Our time is up, I know that now, but don't forget that I still care. I'll always care. I be no longer the more that I could not pray for surrender, not to love the sweetest relief. Still don't know how to do this. This'll trick